To code or to program? That is the question indeed. So in this video, we are going to demystify the difference between coding and programming. Let's go ahead and get started. Programming versus coding. This is one of those debates that I don't think there's a winner. There's always a winner. And I thought I would make this video to perhaps give my thoughts on the differences between coding versus programming. And let's go ahead and take a look. Here's what you need to realize. Since the beginning of time, mankind had to figure out ways to label things. And this actually proved to be a very valuable skill and feature. Labeling things meant for us to be able to organize things in certain categories, which allows us to, at some point, have this language in which civilizations were able to communicate to one another, be it spoken language or written language, and so many other different ways of communication and account for things. Imagine if labeling things wasn't a thing, wasn't invented per se. We would probably be in a very chaotic world where there's no systems. Labeling things was one of the biggest advances in the history of mankind. So naturally, it's no surprise that we are so focused and so obsessed with labeling things. Programming, coding. So it's not a bad thing. It's a great thing. And so that's the reason why we need to do this. Let me give you an analogy. Imagine that you want to build a home. In order to build a home, as you may or may not know, it requires a lot of work. It requires a lot of different moving parts, which means also requires different people with different skills. So if you think about it, in order to build a home, a house, or a building, somebody has to plan that building, create all of the blueprints, and make sure that everything is up to code and all of that. If we simplify the whole process, number one, there's got to be a plan, somebody who plans. So that would be an architect, for instance, plan and create a blueprint of the house. How is the house going to be configured and all the great stuff. But then there are people who have to actually go and do the work, meaning the physical tasks, which in this case go and lay bricks, put all of the walls, the windows, and everything that needs to happen in order to make a house. And that's how I look at the difference between coding versus programming. Coding, I look at it as the task of programming, the actual task of writing the code, the logic. Now, when it comes to programming, it encompasses all of the above, meaning it's not only about the task of sitting in front of a computer and start typing, writing code. Now we need to think like an architect. When you think about the structure of this software, what is that we're trying to build? What is the stack that we're going to be using in order to build this thing? What are the benefits of using stack A versus stack B and all of this other tooling that is needed to build this software? So it's more of an overviewer, a person who is able to conceptualize the idea at a very high level, but also goes into details that need to be part of the process in order to be built. So that is programming. And so you can see that we need both. We need a programmer and we also need a coder. And you can be both. You can be a person who also had to think first about the structure of your project and then be the person also who codes, who actually has to go and sit down and code. Now, in big companies, they will have, for instance, the architect, right? The person who thinks about the overall architecture for that software. And then you have the actual implementers, right? So it can get a little bit fuzzy. But you and I, if you're working for yourself, then you realize that you are a coder as well as a programmer. But also you have to think about the project, you have to think about the structure, about the stack, about the architecturing of that project to come to fruition. So that is the difference, coder and programmer. So don't get bogged down with semantics, with labeling, with names, coder, programmer. At the end of the day, you could be either one of those. You can be all of them. Most of us are all of them, coders and programmers. It's the same thing, essentially, just a little differences here. Keep in mind, programming also includes coding, right? It doesn't mean that a programmer doesn't code. That is not the true. Programmer codes. It's just that becoming a programmer means you have to think also about what you're about to code. It includes planning, design, testing, debugging, deployment, and maintenance of that project. So it's a little bit more. So there's more responsibility for a programmer, of course. But there you go, internet. I hope this was helpful. Now you know the difference between a coder versus a programmer. So again, it's okay. You can be both. You can be one or the other. But either way, you have to write code. And that should be good. That's a good thing. Thank you so much for your time. If you like this video, go ahead and smash the thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe if you're not a subscriber, because as you see, there's a lot of great content here. I so appreciate your time, and till next time, be well.